UCLA and Virginia Tech both fired their head coaches. So they didn't make it to Sunday. Their key cards did not work to get back into the facility. They're going to be potentially looking at a few different candidates. Just first thoughts on that. And then also those players got 30 days to transfer too. So those programs are cooked for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, if they weren't already, especially starting with
Yeah.
UCLA, their losses have been particularly bad, and the fact that the transfers do have 30 days to just up and leave in the middle of the season is super unfortunate because there's going to be a lot of people that decide to make that decision. Starting Utah's or UCLA schedule hasn't looked particularly insane starting the season. Utah was definitely the toughest one. They're now in the top 25 and they're just overall a good team. But 43-10 against Utah, and then followed that up by 30-23 against UNLV, who struggled in week 1 against an FCS school, and then got blown out by University of New Mexico with what was a 5-star quarterback. And we already discussed the Nico Iamaleava situation, but man, they had much higher expectations coming into the season with him transferring, and just in general, it's super unfortunate that their head coach is taking the brunt of this. But I mean, starting 0-3 and having a bleak rest of the season isn't looking too great. They also have Penn State in 2 weeks, and then they follow that up with a ranked Indiana at some point in Ohio State on the road, and then they finish with a USC in the classic battle for LA at the end of the season. So they play 4 ranked teams at the end of the season. If he wasn't going to get fired at this point in the season, he was going to get fired at least some way in the middle of the season or towards the end of the season. So it was probably coming for them. And then Virginia Tech, man, they have looked absolutely awful. That Old Dominion game, it wasn't just the fact that they lost Old Dominion, they got dominated. If you watch that game, the Old Dominion was making one-handed grabs behind their head. It was also just an insane performance from an Old Dominion team where you kind of just look at them as a joke usually. But Virginia Tech, Kyron Drones hasn't looked very good, and in general, that team it doesn't look very good. I think that their probably best performance was in week 1 against South Carolina, and then from there they just got absolutely destroyed by Vanderbilt, and then Old Dominion took it to them too. So unfortunate for these head coaches, but yeah, super early in the season for this to happen too. 0-3 is a bad start, but maybe not unovercomable for a bowl game. But man, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I'll start with the UCLA one then. Yeah, it does suck that Deshaun Foster has to take the brunt of what happened with Nico, but it looks like if they're trying to pick stuff up, maybe that's where they end up going. Like you said, he was probably going to be out anyway. The way that this season was headed, it's going to be the reality that this is very, very pro sports-esque, where we're going to try to save our season at this point. But now you lose all of those guys. They had a slew of guys decommit, and I would imagine that Nico might be gone. He's not going anywhere and getting more money, but maybe he wants to get out of this scenario. We talked about it just a few days ago about the situation whenever they lost their past game. And it looks like he's not just throwing away this season or chasing money that I don't even think he ended up getting more money anyway. He's actively hurting his pro draft stock at this point. It is getting worst case scenario for him, and that is really bad. And this UCLA program is paying for it. Cautionary tale, all parties involved. And Joey Aguilar looks pretty good for Tennessee. They didn't pull out the win against Georgia, but he looks good. And Tennessee is probably going to bounce back after this week. But for Virginia Tech, yeah, Old Dominion, you can't have that game and then just expect to just go business as usual. Those other teams that they played on their schedule are both good, even though obviously South Carolina just took a loss. But yeah, they have, I think, more options as their next head coach is concerned. There's going to be Shane Beamer talks, obviously, with his connection to Virginia Tech. I don't think that that's very feasible right now, but he could have that pull. You're seeing Mike Vick, his name being out there. He's obviously the head coach at Norfolk State. I don't think that that's going to happen, but if you want to reinvigorate the program, that's definitely the biggest swing that you could take. I think that's very valid. Jamie Chadwell, Liberty had them playing very well a couple seasons ago. They're still a good program. Bob Chesney, coach at JMU, he'll probably get a ton of different offers if he wants to end up leaving after this year. That will maybe potentially be out of Virginia Tech's price range. And then Dan Mullen, UNLV, I don't think he leaves after 1 year, but maybe he chases Power 4 job, and that's where he ends up. I think there's some decent options. Those are probably the 4 best ones. But Virginia, I wrote an article on Virginia Tech before the season started, and I remember that their AD was practically begging their boosters for more money. They felt like they were at least, I forget the exact number, but hundreds of thousands of dollars behind the 8 ball as far as the rest of the ACC teams were concerned. They, I think, ranked last in the funding for their athletics. They're in a bit of a more of a hole than I think a lot of other people believe. And it just comes down to, can they get a head coach for their football team that reignites the program? I think they're going to try to take a swing, but they're in a bad spot too. UCLA is in a worse spot, but Virginia Tech's not looking too good either.